All right, it's 8:05, so we're going to go ahead and get into it. As you guys are coming in, let me know in the chat where you're from. And if you have a business, let me know what type of business that you have. Okay. So tonight, this is all about introducing myself to you all. This is my first live, but it's not the last. I just want to introduce myself to you guys. And then also, we're going to talk a bit about the different types of business structures. Okay. So, like I said, if you're here with me, thank you so much for joining me live today. So, my name is Soroya Garner, and I am a trademark and legacy planning attorney. So, I work with underserved creatives and entrepreneurs across the country to help protect their business, brand, and legacy. I graduated from law school in 2020, and after passing the bar, I went ahead and started up my own practice. And since then, I have been on a mission to help equip underserved creatives and entrepreneurs with the knowledge that they need in order to build a business that flourishes, right? To affect change in their personal lives, but ultimately to create thriving ecosystem for future generations to come. Okay, so business ownership, entrepreneurship, it's so much bigger than personal gain, or at least it should be. It's about giving back to the community. It's about creating opportunities for your community and ultimately leaving a legacy and bettering the lives of the next generation. So, to me, entrepreneurship is truly one of the most effective ways to affect positive change in one's life, right? And to see elevation in many aspects. So that is who I am. That's what I'm all about. And I really am here just to serve and to add value. And hopefully you gain at least one new thing that you learned new tonight. Okay. All right. So, if you have a business, okay, like I said, go ahead, let me know what type of business you have in the chat, and what business structure did you select? So on social media, there's so much talk about LLCs, and don't get me wrong, LLCs are phenomenal. But as small business owners getting into the game, it's important that you make informed decisions. So in order to do that, you need to be aware of the different types of business structures, and from there, you can select the one that truly fits your needs best and fits the goals of your business. Okay. And so that's what we're here to talk about today is the different types of business structures that are available to you, okay? So we're not gonna do a deep dive. I just wanna do a high level overview of the different types of structures. And if you guys have questions while we're going through, just go ahead and type them in the chat and I will try to get to them as we are discussing, okay? So why is it so important to understand the different types of business structures, right? It's important because it's ultimately going to affect the sustainability of your business. But not only that, it's going to affect your exposure to personal liability, your tax liability, your management structure, and even the formalities that you'll be required to adhere to. So that's why it's so important not to go after this haphazardly. You really want to be aware of all the pros and cons of each business structure because there definitely are pros and cons for each one, okay? So if you're taking notes, I would go ahead and start by just writing down formal versus informal business structures. So those are our two main buckets of business structures. They're either going to fall in the informal bucket or the formal, okay? And so what's the difference? So informal business structures, for instance, sole proprietorship or a general partnership, okay? Those will be considered informal business structures simply because you don't have to file anything with your government or your Secretary of State in order to operate as one of those structures, okay? If you wake up tomorrow and say you want to operate as a sole proprietor or a general partnership, you can do so, and there's nothing that you need to file with your state, okay? So that's generally the difference between informal versus formal business structures, okay? So what exactly is a sole proprietorship? A sole proprietorship is when you are conducting business in your personal capacity. That's all it is, okay? So if you want to start a sole proprietorship tomorrow, you can do so. And to be quite honest with you, it's not even necessarily starting a sole proprietorship because, like I said, you don't have to file anything to get started. You can just get going, okay? But that's pretty much where the benefits begin and end. So, for sole proprietorships are very easy to get started because there's no legwork that you really have to do initially. But like I said, the benefits in there. So if you choose to conduct business as a sole proprietor, you are going to be subjected to unlimited personal liability. Okay. So what that means is in the event that you happen to be sued or if you have creditors, you're going to be personally liable for that. So that means your home, your business, your personal bank account, your car, all of that could be subject to that lawsuit or to that creditor. So you have no shield or no protection when you are conducting business in the capacity of a sole proprietor, right? In regards to taxes, as a sole proprietor, you would be taxed. It's called pass-through taxation. Okay, and so what that means is that any profits or losses that are realized would be taxed on your individual income. Okay, so keep that in mind. Very similar to a sole proprietorship is what's called a general partnership. And the only difference between the two is that you have two or more people that have decided to come together and conduct business as co-owners. So just like a sole proprietorship, you're going to have unlimited personal liability. The taxation is the same as well, okay? So based on just that brief synopsis of the two, there truly is no benefit to conducting business in those capacities. So I recommend that you don't select informal business structures if you decide to move forward and actually start up a business. Okay. So let's shift gears a little bit, and we're going to look at the formal business structures. Okay, so we have LLCs, we have corporations. There's something called a limited liability partnership. So there's different types of partnerships, but today we're just going to look at the LLC and the corporation, which would fall under the formal business structures. So for these structures, you are going to have to file with your Secretary of State in order to legally operate or to conduct business. Okay. So an LLC, something that a lot of people are familiar with or they have at least heard of, it's a limited liability company, okay? And it is known for its flexibility and its liability protection, okay? So it's definitely a popular entity that lots of entrepreneurs and business owners select, and rightfully so, okay? So you can be a single member LLC, or you can act as a multi-member LLC. So this again lends to the flexibility of having a limited liability company. Okay, so you have those options. In regards to the protection that you receive as a LLC, you have limited liability protection, hence the name Limited Liability Company LLC. Okay, so what that means, converse of the sole prop or the general partnership, if you were to be sued or you had creditors, you would be shielded from personal liability. So they would only be able to go after or attach to your business assets, okay? However, it is very important, and maybe we can dive into this in another video, but it's important to note that your limited liability protection, it can be pierce. So in legal terms, we call this piercing the corporate veil. So doing activities such as commingling your funds. So you're mixing your business finances and your personal finances together. That's what commingling means. So doing that on a routine basis would be cause for piercing the corporate veil or losing your limited liability protection. Another example of an activity that would make you vulnerable to losing your liability protection is signing contracts in your personal name. So it's very important to know how to properly sign a contract as a business owner. Okay, you don't want to go in signing contracts under your personal name because now you're subjecting yourself on a personal level, and that defeats the whole purpose of having an LLC in the first place. So you want to make sure that you are signing all contracts in the name of the business. Okay. So those are just two examples of activities that could make you or open you up to personal liability. Okay. In regards to taxation, and when it relates to LLCs, they are taxed as pass-through entities as well. Okay, so just like your sole proprietorship or your general partnership, you're going to be subjected to pass-through taxation. And again, that means that any profits or losses that are realized from your business activity are going to pass through to your personal income tax return. Okay, so that's a misconception a lot of people have, is that, just forming their LLC, you're going to get all these wonderful tax benefits, but that's not necessarily true because under the tax code or IRS, they realize single member LLCs as disregarded entities. So you're not even able to take advantage of a lot of those tax benefits that corporations often do. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. However, at the end, we're going to talk just briefly about S corps and how you may be able to still have an LLC but benefit from the taxation of an S corp. All right. Okay, so that's just a quick overview of the LLC. If you guys have any questions about that thus far, go ahead and put it in the chat so I can answer it for you. And then we're going to move on to our fourth business entity type, which is our corporation or a C Corp. Okay, this is the traditional corporation. And, you know, lots of small business owners and new entrepreneurs, they like the sound of having a corporation because they think it makes them sound all big and fancy. But really, having a corporation may be more headache than it's truly worth. Okay, so with the corporation, they are the most complex structures or entities to set up. Okay, and they're really often reserved for companies that are going to be publicly traded. So if you're not planning to be a publicly traded company, then there's really not a whole lot of benefit for operating as a C corp. All right. Um, but if that is you, okay, there are a huge amount of benefits that come with operating as a C Corp. All right. So corporations, they are able to realize the most amount of fringe benefits or write-offs on their taxes. But like I said, that comes with having to adhere to a lot of formalities, to be quite honest. So you have to have your board of directors, you have to have regular meetings and take meeting minutes and things of that nature. There's lots of reporting requirements. So as a small business owner or even a single member business owner, operating as a corporation is not even feasible. So I really wouldn't suggest that if you're just starting out, and like I said, don't have plans to publicly trade your business. Okay. Now, unlike all the other entities that we spoke about, a corporation is subjected to double taxation. So, what this means is that the business will be taxed on the corporate level, okay, and then they're going to be taxed on the personal tax return level of the shareholders, okay. So, with a corporation, you have shareholders, you have your board of directors, and then you also have officers, okay. And this is kind of leading into the overall management of a corporation. But this is important to keep in mind. So corporations are subjected to double taxation. All right. So if you're joining us, welcome, welcome. Let me know where you're from and what type of business that you have. We're just going through the the four major entity structures, and we've already gone through sole prop, general partnerships, LLCs, and corporations. And now I'm just going to touch briefly on S corps, because this is something that a lot of people get confused about. And many people think that an S corp is a business entity, but it's not. So an S corporation is a tax election. So I mentioned a few minutes ago, you can have an LLC and elect to be taxed as an S corporation. All right, so don't get that confused. An S corp is not an entity; it's a tax election. All right, and so in order to be taxed as an S corp, you would need to file Form 2553 with the IRS, and in order to make that election, but it's also taxed as a pass-through entity, okay? So how it works is you are able to take advantage of the tax benefits when you pay yourself as the owner of that entity a regular salary, okay? And then you can have distributions that you pay yourself on top of that, okay? But how it works is you're only paying your Social Security and Medicaid taxes on the base salary. You do not have to pay those taxes on any distributions that you make to yourself. And this is a huge benefit. But for something like this, you would definitely want to consult with your CPA to determine when it would be the right time to elect for the S Corp taxation. Typically, and if you speak to different CPAs, they'll tell you a different amount. But what I have routinely heard is that unless you're making $75,000 annually in your business on a routine basis, then it really doesn't make much sense to elect to be taxed as an S corp. But again, that's something you would want to check with your CPA and see how they would advise you on that. But that is the main difference between the S corp taxation and then being taxed just as a single member LLC or a sole proprietor. Okay, so for those entities, like I mentioned, it's passed through. Everything is passed through. So all profits and all losses would be paid on the individual tax return. All right. Versus with the S corp, you're only going to be taxed on the base salary that you're paying to yourself, not any additional distributions that have been made to the owner. So there we go. That is a brief overview of the different types of business structures. I hope that this was helpful to you guys. Like I said, if you're on here with me, please let me know if you have any questions, because this is important information. It really does have a huge effect on the sustainability of your business. So it's important to make sure that you have at least a general understanding of the different types of entities so that you can select the entity that makes the most sense for you and the growth of your business. Okay, so I'm going to hang on here for a few more minutes and see if you guys have any questions. If not, we're going to sign off in a few minutes. Today was really just an intro, introduce myself, and then to quickly go over the different types of entity structures. But we'll be back again next week, next Monday. Based on the feedback here, we may dive in a little deeper or talk some more about the entity structures. If not, we'll move on to another area that affects a lot of business owners, okay? So we'll give it a couple more minutes. But thank you guys that are here for joining. I hope it was valuable and you learned at least one thing that you didn't know prior to joining tonight. All right, guys. Well, I'm not seeing any questions coming in, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for the evening. Thanks again for joining. See ya.